Between the hills, the stars, the sky, the river so clear, river so clear.
Let us join in a spirit of meditation, reflection, or prayer as we deepen into our service and share our opening words for this morning. This reading comes from Patrick Overton's book of poetry titled The Leaning Tree. It's stepping into the unknown. It's taking the road less traveled. This time reminds me of when you walk to the edge of all the light you have and take that first step into the darkness of the unknown, you must believe that one of two things will happen. There will be something for you to stand upon, or you will be taught to fly. We join Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists all over the world in lighting our chalice. Would Karen please come up to light the chalice, which is a symbol of the spark of life in each of us. If you are on Zoom and have your chalice with you, I invite you to turn on your video to share while we light them. We are in good company. Our chalice lighting words are titled Cherish Your Dreams. The poet Langston Hughes has written, "Hold fast to your dreams, for if they die, life is a broken winged bird and that cannot fly." May this chalice flame challenge each of us to cherish our dreams, for all things worth doing begin in the courage and inspiration of a dream. Before we get into our program, a reading to set the stage. One many of us are familiar with, "For everything a season," Ecclesiastes 3. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Rev Dr Megan Foley, Regional Lead for the Central East Region staff and Acting Deputy Director of Congregational Life. Before joining Central East Regional staff, Rev Dr Megan Foley served for 6 years as the minister of the Sugarloaf Congregation of Unitarian Universalists in Germantown, Maryland. Megan holds a Doctor of Ministry and Public Theology degree from Drew University, holds a Doctor of Ministry in Public Theology from Drew University, and holds a Master of Divinity degree from Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C., and an MA in Sociology from the University of Connecticut at Storrs. She was born in Oakland, California, and lived around the world before coming to live in Silver Spring with her husband, Neil, and their 2 sons in 2002. She brings expertise in small congregational life and focused ministries to the regional team. And now, this time when we might be flying, with Megan Foley.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you today. My name is Megan Foley, and I am a minister working for the Unitarian Universalist Association, supporting our congregations in these spectacularly weird times. I'm so pleased to be talking with you in this threshold moment when we've learned and endured so much. So much of what we're used to in congregational life has been broken down. And we're here together, looking ahead, ready to imagine what might be next for our religious lives and build it together. Despite all of the devastation our churches and our world has endured in these past few years, I nearly titled this sermon, "The Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades," after a song by Timbuk3 that was popular when I was in high school. That's a funny attitude to take in this day and age, I know. Let me tell you more about why I am enthusiastic about this next chapter of congregational life, no matter how tricky or complicated it might look right now. On my sabbatical last summer, I was lucky enough to spend a great deal of time in London and Scotland, studying some history, especially of the ways England colonized the various parts of the world that my people are from. You may have experienced yourself how interesting it is to be around these casually historical sites overseas, because they're so much older than American ones. I think Americans tend to abandon places, expand and rebuild things new here, which I guess is probably part of America's colonizing DNA, and also because we have claimed a good deal of space for ourselves on this continent. In England and Scotland, they build and rebuild on what was there before. So the Romans founded Londinium, today's London, around the year 49. Yes, just 49. And they built walls and towers to create the city they wanted, keeping the local people out. And some of those are still there 2,000 years later, and some are covered up. And some exist simply on maps at this point, but there are memorials to remember them because on top of it, there is 2,000 years of reinvented city in that same place. In Edinburgh, Scotland, the whole main part of town used to be enclosed by walls into 1 mile-long street that led from the castle at the top of the hill to the palace at the bottom of the hill. That street is still there, even some of the walls, the buildings repurposed, redeveloped, still standing, still active, in ways that seemed foreign to my American mind. My American outlook is used to abandoned streets and buildings and whole towns sometimes with shiny new ones down the road. I'm not recommending this American way of being. I think it's wasteful and invasive. I'm just saying that's what's happened here. What I learned from being in these places overseas is that it can be helpful to have a longer view of world events. Things can be destroyed for a long time and then rebuilt right where the old thing was. Plague can come and go for 100 years, 200, 400, and then be gone. 2 countries can be enemies of one another and kill each other in horrible ways, and then unify by force, and then unify by consent, and then vote to separate again. A whole continent can descend into an era so bad it's called the Dark Ages, and it lasts for centuries. But we're a long way away from those days now, no matter how bad they were. I guess what I'm saying is, things change. I'm not talking about this to take away from the pain of the last few years or the fear that you may feel about your congregation, the earth, our politics, our health, or our future. These are all significant concerns. The problems of every age immerse the people of that age. I'm just noting the obvious. Every time the world has seen destruction, something new came to pass. New times come. They have to. Humans carry on to their next chapter. That's what they do. And this is true for your congregation too, even if things seem rough right now, or at least very, very confusing. Those of you familiar with UU history will remember Reverend Theodore Parker from the 1850s. He was the minister of a congregation in Massachusetts and did a lot of good work for the abolition of slavery. He also delivered a sermon that UUs consider foundational even today, called The Transient and Permanent in Christianity. He says Christianity because Unitarianism and Universalism were both Christian religions in Parker's day. In The Transient and Permanent in Christianity, Parker comments on the enormous length of time that Jesus's message to love your neighbor has managed to last. It's lasted this long Parker said 200 years ago. It's lasted this long, while at the same time, as Parker put it, the words of other great men, men whose names shook whole continents, graven in metal and stone, stamped in institutions and defended by whole tribes of priests and troops of followers, those other men's words have gone to the ground. Please excuse the gendered language. Parker's point was at the core of Jesus's message, the one that Unitarian Universalists still follow today, although in different form than even in Parker's era, the core message of love and care for neighbor is so powerful that it bears all time and events. Love and care for neighbor, for other beings, is so powerful that it cannot be vanquished, even though all other human things rise and fall away, buildings, communities, nations, cities, hopes and dreams, cultures. Parker puts it this way: how fleeting is what man calls great, how lasting what God pronounces true. Jump back with me to the 21st century, back into our congregations who have endured so much since the pandemic began nearly 3 years ago. I bet you never knew you could change so much so fast, but you did. I bet you never knew you could be so worried or so tired for so long, but you were. If you're like me, you're a little surprised about where we've ended up. Everything is new again. Here we are together in a unique moment in time. The religious communities around me here in the Washington, D.C. area are filling back up with people, but they haven't gone back to the way things were. The way things were isn't possible because the people have changed. The practices and processes that kept the congregations going the last time people were in the building don't always seem right anymore. Sometimes the building itself doesn't seem right. The budget looks different. People are coming starving to be spiritually nourished and materially supported, to be connected to something larger than themselves, but often they have little to give in time or energy or goodwill or money. Sometimes it might just feel like everything we knew and relied on has been torn down. And what we have now isn't clear at all. It's like the time in the air between letting go of the first trapeze and grabbing the second one. Technically, it's falling, but it's also kind of flying. This is a liminal time, a time between times, a time best spent considering options, shoring up relationships, resting, grieving too, as you need. We've lost many things. Congregations that aren't really working the way they did before is a kind of loss too. We feel we may be falling, but there's a chance we could be flying. What gets our congregations ready to fly? I'd like to make a suggestion. You might find it surprising. My suggestion is, let the things go. You wouldn't fly between one trapeze and the next with a heavy suitcase and your favorite pillows. It won't work. And if you never let go of the first bar, you're never going to fly to the next one. You'll just slam back into the past. So in your church, practice letting things fall. Let them fall down because, as Parker says, the words and deeds of human beings are meant to come and go. The simplest look at history shows that it's so. And yet, the message to love your neighbor remains throughout time and space. Why waste your energy holding on to something that is more familiar than useful? The congregation is simply a vehicle for the real work of church. And the real work is the asking again and again, what does love and life want us to do in this time with these people? What does love and life want you to do in this time with your people? Not a mythical, magical you, a you with more money, more families, better tech skills. No, what's the real you as you are today? What does love and life want your group to do? Your group, just as it is right now. What can you all do today, just as you are? It's you the world needs, the real you. It doesn't have to cost money. It doesn't need a building. It doesn't need a governance structure until it does. It doesn't need professional clergy. It needs you and your heartfelt response to the question, what does love and life want us to do in this time with these people? Here's some great news, and really why I'm pretty optimistic about this time we're in. The nimbleness that you learned during the pandemic is the best skill you can offer to these times, because these times are always changing and are always going to change. You might consider change itself to be bad news, and I'm sorry about that. Let your energy level inform you about your next steps. If change seems impossible right now, then it's still time to rest. But I know you learned to adjust and adapt during the pandemic. Keep practicing that. Think of adapting as the best thing your community can do. If you don't have the resources you need to create your next chapter, then go and find some. Partner with others. Use technology like this worship series to give you some rest, inspiration, and energy. But keep returning to the real question. What does love and life want us to do in this time and with these people? The answer probably isn't something like find a worship associate for next month. It's probably more like feed the hungry. Connect with the people who lived on your land before white people took it. Make friends with the kids next door. Help people vote. Meet those who are the poorest in your town and get to know each other. Give rides to the elderly. Smile at strangers. Open up to different cultures and leadership styles. It doesn't matter if it's big or small. It matters if it's your thing to do at this time. You may remember that 20th century theologian Howard Thurman once said that we should pick the work in the world that makes us come alive, because what the world needs most is people who have come alive. I think we also need religious communities that have come alive. And I know that this time, when so much in our churches has been undone, lost, destroyed, I know that this is the perfect time to ask questions like, what makes our group come alive? And then rebuild right where you are around the answer to that. The special sauce of Unitarian Universalism is our attempt to create beloved community, the vision that Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesus himself were so fond of describing. Beloved community is the sort of community where love of neighbor comes first. People are celebrated and welcomed for who they are, even you. Decisions are made with all the people who are affected at the table. No one is left behind. The circle is always expanding to include one more. Some of our congregations are better at creating this sort of community inside of their metaphorical walls, and some are better at bringing it to the world outside. But this particular way of loving our neighbor, welcoming the stranger, caring for each other, it's what Unitarian Universalists do. Which little piece of beloved community will your church be making? What's needed in your place that only you can see, only you can heal? This world needs us badly. There's no shortage of opportunities or choices. Which one is the one for your group? I can't wait to see what each of our communities might do next. And I can't wait to see what we are all doing when we come together. To my mind, the future is bright, so bright you might want your shades. There's nothing now that needs to be in the way of your focus on what really matters, on what you are called to do. Let's make this age one that counts, a time that moves us forward in the quest for love and justice for everyone. Our era is crying out for the work that needs to be done. We have the hands and hearts with which to do it right here, right now. We are enough for this time. Blessings on you and your community's efforts. I believe in you. Amen.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall all be free someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday. Verse 1. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
We will now extinguish our chalice with these words by Eric Walker Wickstrom. If you are who you were, and if the person next to you is who he or she was, if none of us have changed since the day we came in here, we have failed. The purpose of this community, of any church, temple, zendo, mosque, is to help its people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown, in ourselves, in one another, in the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard that might be, because these encounters have so many gifts to offer. So may you go forth from here this morning, not who you were, but who you could be. So may we all.